Hi and welcome to the Mixed Reality Toolkit's Guide to Controller Models. In this session we're going to walk through how to replace the controller models in your scene, how to use what's available in the toolkit, and also a little sneak peek of what's coming. So here we're going to go through all the little bits and doodahs for getting your controllers configured. By default, the Mixed Reality Toolkit comes with a set of default controllers, so it's sort of gizmos. We chose this simply because it was an easy way to show where the user is pointing a controller, how you can orientate all the pointers and things like that around the model itself to get all your interactions set up before you then went and started throwing your own models into the scene. Obviously, we support having your own models replaced with the defaults that are there. We'll walk through how to set those up, and we'll also talk about what the defaults are and how can they be replaced. Now, there's one caveat in here is that as of today, the time of recording, the team are still working on getting the platform level controls set up. Now, this might sound odd as the old Holo Toolkit supported this out of the box, but the problem we had there is that it was using the old Newtonsoft DLLs, which create a huge amount of problems when you're working cross-platform. You didn't want to be able to switching out DLLs and things and making the whole platform level thing complicated. A recent PR went in to actually have support rendering of the formats that the platform models come in, which hasn't got animations in yet, but it's a step-by-step progress, but keep your eyes peeled because they're available really soon if you use the platform ones. Projects I work with, most cases, use their own because they want some kind of custom interaction or hands or things like that. And in fact, I got a nice little surprise later on, which will keep you posted. What do we do? So obviously in the Mixed Reality Toolkit, as we said in previous videos, we are heavily focused on configuration. So it's no longer a case of here's this prefab, put this here, attach it to here, configure this script here, go over here, do this. None of that. Simply create your models, attach them to the configuration, and that's it. You don't have to have them in the scene. They will activate when the controllers are found if you want them to. If you want to, you can turn them off and on, as and so you wish. Even in a transition scene, you can turn the controllers off on demand, and everything you would expect from able to do controllers. About the only thing they don't support today is haptics. But with the new hand interactions coming in with HoloLens, the story on that is sort of evolving and developing. So, if we look at the actual configuration for the Mixed Reality controllers, you'll find these in the Mixed Reality Toolkit Input Settings Controller Visualization profile. And you can either jump straight to this or you can navigate to it however you wish. You have an option of selecting what type of visualize you want to use. Obviously, Mixed Reality Toolkit comes with one out of the box that you're free to use and everything else. But if there are things it doesn't do or things you want to do differently, you can just write your own. And we'll cover late on the later session exactly how to do that, about building your own components and even swapping them in and out. There is an option there for using the system models as and when that becomes available. And as you can see here, that we have a global set of defaults, which means this is the profile that's going to use for anything by default. And then you simply switch out the prefab for that item. But we also give you the option to be able to select it per platform. And we'll go into a little bit more what that means. So in the whole things is set up, we have the default set up, which looks like the Unity 3D Gizmo. We try to keep things commonplace, simple to use, quick to render. And this you can simply replace with your own. You simply set it up correctly and attach it to the configuration. And you can also, if you want to, specify per platform a different model. So if you want to have a model for Oculus and a model for Rift, because the interactions are slightly different for whatever reason, you can do. If you don't configure it and you've just got the globals there, that's what it will use. If you've selected to use the platform ones instead, then it will use those. If you can get them, if not, it will use your defaults. It's fairly fluid. Play with it, see what you like with it, off you go. And as I said, the platform specific ones, they're coming soon, and they will work for all the platforms that we support out of the box. When you're setting up your prefab, there is a little bit of know-how of setting one up. Just to make sure the fact that your model is going to work correctly in the scene when it's attached to the Mixed Reality Toolkit. It needs sort of an empty attachment point, sort of a base game object that is the hook for your controller. Then as a child of that, you're going to have your model. And then under that, you're going to have any animations or other things you want to do to control out of the system. I mean, the visualizer that we've provided by default doesn't yet support animations, but it's on the roadmap to enable it in a more generic sense. So you can use whatever animations you want and configure them quite easily. The one key thing you need to know is that at the attachment point, the game object there, you need to have the mixed reality controller visualizer script. This is the thing that will be sought out and detected by the framework, so it knows how to pick it up, put it in the scene, start rotating it. Another key thing to watch out for is that in your model, one, make sure it's scaled correctly. In the demo, I'll walk through exactly what happens when you don't set your scale properly, so that you know what's going on. Also, your model is where you're also going to attach any rotations and things. So if the model out of the box that you get isn't oriented the right way, then you need to change it on the model level, not the attachment points, because that's a fixed point, to make it work the way you want to do. And we'll also go through that as well, just for fun. So, enough lollygagging. There's a word for you. Let's quickly switch over to the demo. And so here I am in the default scene that I've used. I'm always still using, again, the 3D prefabs with extras, or 3D with extras Unity scene, just because I like having something to look at. But we'll play a bit more later. So, as in before, we've simply hit Mixed Reality Toolkit and configure, and we've got everything set up. If we look at our configuration, we've got everything set up here, and if we go into input settings and into the visualization settings here, you'll see that there's all the defaults there with gizmos left and right set up. And if I hit run on this, I'll see the gizmos in the scene. So let's do that. Oh, it looks weird. And you can see this is one key thing. If you remember from the quick start video, I've made one critical error. My start position is in the middle of the wall. I always love this. As a tidy reminder back from that original session, if that happens, do not move the play space. The play space is always centered at 0, because that's where, whether it's an AR piece of hardware or whether it's a VR piece of hardware, they control how that moves around. And if you change it, it will mess things up completely. So we go back to our example assets and let's look at the scene. So let's zoom out a bit. There we go. And then look a bit closer. And you can see, yes, my camera is currently embedded in the wall. So I'm going to move my scene, not the camera, over and put it somewhere centered. And then we'll go and play again. Can't see it here is me jazzily trying to put my headset on with my headphones already on. And there we go. There's my scene. I can look around. Nice and pretty. And if I go and grab a controller and turn it on, you can see it comes on. Now, one thing I will notice, if you're using the post-processing stack currently, the standard shade that we use, the MRTK, does make these look a bit fuzzy. Not entirely sure why, but you can simply play, go around. But if you use this scene without the post-processing stack, this is an effect. You may want to sort of change the shader that's used on this, or since this is not really meant to be used in a real project, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. Your own controller is going to do, and you'll see for what the pointer on, you can see it's coming straight out of the actual blue z-axis there, so we're pointing out. And then obviously if there was there's a collision here, I can go and teleport and things like that. So that's where we get out of the box. No configuration necessary. I'm actually going to create a new scene just for fun. Here we go. There's my scene set up. As usual, I'm going to hit my mixed reality configure, so everything's set up. And now I'm going to start making my own configuration because I want to change out what I want to use. So I'm going to copy the main config, and then also going to change my input settings. And in my input settings, I'm going to make a new controller visualizer. Obviously, everything else is set by default. I can change, do what I want, everything else, but I'm just playing with this configuration today. Makes it easy. It's something that you're only going to do, rarely going to do once or twice, and then once it's set up for your project, you shouldn't need to touch it again. So you can see by the moment, you see in the SDK, we have the default debug controllers. And if I look at this prefab, you can see it's got a lot of things here. We've got our hook point. We've got all the parts of our model underneath. You can see in the hook, the game object, all there is this visualizer, and then everything they're going to do. But enough about that. I'm going to have a really snazzy, shining example of what a controller should be. So I'm going to create my left hand. I'm going to go and attach, whoops, no, not game object, left hand. I want a left hand, darn it. I'm going to add my mixed reality controller visualizer. So what this does is This, as it says, synchronizes the position of the controller position that comes from the driver, and then orientates that in the scene relative to where your head is. That's all it does. You can look at the script for this, and you can see it does very, very little. It's simply moving things around as it should do, and rotating and things like that. Then what we do under this, I'm going to create a 3D, and you ready for it? A sphere. Right, that's nice. Okay, and now since it's my left hand, I make sure it's my left hand, and then I'm going to do, in fact, what I'll do is I'll simply duplicate that for fun, and this is going to be my right hand, and all I'm going to do here is change this to my right hand. Okay, nice and simple. Obviously, we need prefabs, not objects in the scene, so I'm going to drag it here, and then drag this here, and obviously delete the original. So I'm not configuring anything in the scene at all. So now I'll go back to my configuration, go to my input settings, and my controller visualizer. Alternatively, I could have actually gone to where the default, when you create profiles, it creates a copy of it for you, and I've got them here. Let's list that down. And there's my controller visual. I can just go straight to it if I wished. And there I have my current left and right. And if I go here, I've got my left hand. And I've got my right hand. There. Nice and simple, he says. Now if I go and run this, donning my headset again. And I'm going to turn my controller on. And then I have a mild bit of panic because I can't see anything. Unless I move the controller far enough away from my head, I can see this huge ball floating in space. And you can just about make out it's moving and rotating. So this is one of the first tricks you get, is that when you're creating your own models, or when you're importing in from your artist, or you're downloading them even, you'll find that you need to check their scale. So if I go and edit this prefab now, this is currently set to scale 1. And in mixed reality terms, that's huge. So I'm going to scale this down to a much more reasonable sort of 0.2 scale. Better to scale it than start asking your artist to change the models, because it's easier to tweak it in the rendering settings than it is in the actual project itself. I'll make sure I do the same in my right hand. And now if I go and run this, it's all nice and doodly. So play, run. I can see blue. You can't see blue because that's Unity. And we go and connect our controller again. And there is a much more lifelike, real-sized ball. Obviously, you can't see me rotating it, but you can see me waving it about. You can imagine this like a boxing game, sort of punching things. Just realised I can't hold 2 controllers. I'm holding my headset with my one hand and wave my controller with the other. It's a shame. But anyway, there's the simple way. So, as you can see, creating your own controller and just attaching it into the actual configuration, easy as pie. You know, no messing about. Just create your prefab, attach it to the config, off you go. That then works for your entire project. And obviously, if we could look at the configuration again, I could, if I wanted to, say, add a new controller definition. And okay, I've got all these different definitions here. So OpenVR, I can say for the Vive knuckles, I want to use this prefab, and it will override it. So for everything else, I'll use these. But for my Vive knuckles, I've got one with a pointed stick. I kid not, I don't know. You can do whatever you wish, and I can obviously then override the model for that one if I wished. Nice and easy peasy. Again, same setting where this says whether we do it for the left hand or the right hand, so whichever way you want to do it. And again, if you wanted to say, well, these are my settings for that, but on the Oculus Rift, I actually want to use the platform model instead of that. And then that will override whatever else you can configure when that controller is detected and configured. Again, dead easy. One simple screen to configure all your controllers. But these little spheres are a bit boring, so what else can we do? Right, well, Oculus provide us with some nice free, I say free, hand models. So you can either download from their site, you can use this link here for getting a hold of the actual source models themselves. But as we're in Unity, there is actually an easy way to do it, and they've got everything pre-set up for you. Because obviously those are just models, there's not really any animations or things like that in it. We switch back to Unity. If we go to the asset store, and we can look up the Oculus integration. I can see here now the sample framework has been bundled in with the full Oculus integration, but as we're only wanting the hands, not the full Oculus integration at this point in time, as it's not compatible with the MRTK just yet, we're just going to select the hands themselves. And Unity really does give me a lot of time to start talking about things while we're waiting for things to happen. But hey ho. So while this is getting ready, we're just going to select the hands, pull them into our project. Now, as the hands today are configured to the Oculus way of doing things, we need to tweak them so that they'll be more MRTK-like. And also, by default, the hands will come out in an old position from how we're using controllers, because they're more geared to how the Oculus SDK works, not the MRTK. But the benefit here is the fact that once we start using these, once Oculus is actually enabled in the MRTK, then these will just work. Dead easy. So if I unselect the whole Oculus package and I scroll down here, and eventually I'll find the Oculus sample framework, and then I'm going to go down, I'm just going to select the custom hands part. This is a lot of animations, some models, and everything else. Lots of juicy goodness. But did I say it's free? So while we're importing and compiling, and then what we're going to do is strip out the Oculus scripts, because since the Oculus SDK is not there, they're going to cause errors. We're also going to then take each of the hands and manipulate them to be MRTK-ified. If I say that enough times, I can keep repeating myself. But it's important to note we're tweaking and doing what we're doing. So now they're imported, we'll go down, and first what we'll do is get rid of these scripts, because if you look in the console, they've got lots of errors because of these, because the Oculus SDK is not there. So no, I don't want to rename it, I want to delete it. There we go. Check my console, and it should be clean now. Okay, so there we go. Thinking, there we go. Right. So in here we got our custom handle left and right, and we go into this. Obviously the first few things we need to do is get rid of these missing scripts now, because it's trying to reference things that are in the Oculus SDK. We'll get this error because there's lots of other errors in it. And also, remember I said that the attachment point has to be 0, 0, 0. The Oculus one comes preset up at odd positions, so remove that. And it also has this old thing in it. Now, like we did when we were building our own, we then also need to go and add the motion controller visualizer. And this is our left hand. Yep, so that's all set up. And save it. And also we do the same with our right hand. So let's get rid of the old. Yes, error. Get rid of our mono components. Set our transforms and add our motion controller visualizer. And this is our right hand. So I save that now. Now that we have our models, we simply need to go back to our configuration, go to our controller visualization, and then I'm going to simply assign in these custom hands to the models. Yes, please do to know this is the second time I do this because I had an issue the first time. Aha. But anyway, we go run that. So with the models in the default orientation, and when they're running, I'm going to activate our controller. And there's our hand. But you see at the moment, it's actually orientated a bit strange because really I need it to start there. Because now if I want to do so, I'm going to twist my arm around. And it's just a little bit odd. So let's fix that. But there are, nice little hand in there. That's enough. And go back. And then all we need to do really is go back to our prefabs themselves, remembering that the transform itself has to say 0 and we're just altering the actual model itself. So in here I want to rotate it by 90 degrees to give it that nice little rotation. Save that because Unity. And my right hand, I'm going to go there, select the model, and then I'm going to do minus 90. There. That's all I need to do. The model that's being rotated underneath the attachment point. I'm just doing it so that the default start position now it'll be what I expect. Now if I go and run the project again, and then I'm going to go and connect my controller, And ta-da! There we go. My hand is now... I'm shaking hands virtually with no one. I can't even do it myself. I'll scratch my nose a bit. There we go. Needed that. But there we go. That's how we can get the Oculus hands installed and switching out whatever models you're using. Right, enough demos. So there we have it. There's our complete guide to how to work with controllers. I had to do that next because that's by far the #1 question asked at all the game jams and things where we've used the Mixed Reality Toolkit of people wanting something other than a gizmo. Because the gizmos looked, to be honest, silly. They are there as a developer tool for applying scale, checking your scene, so you have something to measure against. But obviously it's not a production-ready kind of thing. Okay, that's been this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to many more.